Good evening. This is Classical Theater, and I'm your host, Kevin the Chicken. The sitcom Cheers premiered in 1982, and by the time it ended in 1993, it had become iconic, its characters and settings and jokes all instantly recognizable. By contrast, Wings, created by the same team, debuted in 1990 and wasn't quite as successful. Now, I really liked both shows, and I think Wings was every bit as funny as Cheers was. But even so, they were made by the same people, and when I watch them now, I notice a lot of repeating of jokes and plot devices, and sometimes entire episodes. And I thought it'd be fun to take a look at some of these. So tonight, I present Who Did It Better? Cheers versus Wings. On Wings, Joe is the de facto leader who everyone looks to for advice, And Brian is the ladies' man with a narcissistic immaturity that others find endearing. On Cheers, Sam was both of those things. Diane Chambers came to the bar as the result of a really bad breakup, and she sees herself as a little bit above the people around her. This is a lot like Casey on Wings, who returned to Nantucket when Stewart left her. Helen's love of the cello kind of sets her apart from her peers, which kind of makes her a little bit like Diane. But she was also kind of bitter about her life, and she was never afraid of physical confrontation, so in a lot of ways she was a lot more like Carla than Diane. Both Alex and Rebecca joined their series later in the run, and they were both kind of brash and ambitious, the classic woman trying to make it in a man's world. Faye was an older mentor type to Joe, the same way that Coach was to Sam. Lowell was kind of dim, but he had a good heart, just like Woody. Roy was obnoxious and unlikable, but tolerated by the group, just like Cliff. Antonio had a job outside the airport. That always affected his storylines, just the same way that Cliff did on Cheers. Carla and Antonio both had hard lives and bad luck. And finally, Casey and Brian were attracted to each other, but they never really had an official relationship, kind of the same way Sam and Rebecca did. As for the secondary characters, both Sumner and Stewart broke up with Diane and Casey respectively, and they both returned later to cause trouble. Robin Colcord and Davis Lynch were both rich guys who got engaged to main characters. Both left and both returned later to cause trouble. And finally, both shows had recurring characters that were a little bit obsessive.
I'll give you a little kiss.
Here, Rebecca kisses Sam just to prove a point, but it gets real all of a sudden.
Yes? No?
Definite maybe.
Here, Helen and Joe do the same thing. I wish I could play the audio because this is where Lowell sings Moon River over the radio, and it's really funny. Gotta give that one to Wings. Here, Sam is kind of flailing around.
I've never met an intelligent woman that I'd want to date.
To which Diane responds,
On behalf of the intelligent women around the world, say...
And over on Wings, Brian claims to be sterile, and Helen responds,
On behalf of all the women of childbearing age, thank God.
I gotta give that one to Cheers. The way that line was delivered on Wings, it didn't even seem natural. Diane is trying to let a guy down easy, so she's asking Sam for a lie that she can tell. And he comes up with this.
That you have a contagious skin condition and that insanity runs in your family.
Diane is outraged. She would never tell a guy that. Of course, then...
I have a contagious skin disease and insanity runs in my family.
On Wings, Roy, on a blind date, randomly asks his date,
"Does insanity run in your family?"
Again, I'm going to have to give this one to Cheers. It was part of a much bigger joke. On Wings, it just came out of nowhere and there was no context. And I want to note also, this is a line from an old movie with Cary Grant called Arsenic and Old Lace.
Insanity runs in my family.
At the end of the first season of Cheers, Sam and Diane got together after a big fight in Sam's office. Joe and Helen's relationship started off a little differently, and this was actually their second kiss.
That's amore.
And then when they broke up the first time, they did have a big fight.
Way. Don't you people have wives?
Sorta, yeah.
This is another one for Cheers. It was just so much funnier the first time.
I've got a product that's gonna change your life.
In the second season of Wings, Lowell invests money in a barbecue, a device that cooks meat on the engine of your car while it's running.
It's more than a barbecue. It's more than a car. It's a barbecue.
Later that same year, on Cheers, the guys have a car accident because...
Seems like what we got here is a burned piece of meat.
You're cooking there. You see, you put your food on the engine and you can drive and cook at the same time.
Did Cliff buy a barbecue from Lowell? Now, personally, I don't think the joke's even all that funny, but Wings definitely did this one better. Also, I want to make note that of all the things on my list, there were only 2 that Wings did first before Cheers did it. Now, I want to take a minute and explain something because this is going to come up several times as I go through these. Okay, in this episode, Lowell's wife was trying to sell frying pans door to door, and Roy tells Lowell to take them down to the swap meet to get rid of them. Lowell comes back with the barbecue, and then the joke is that Roy and Lowell keep using it, you know. It's not a great joke, but they took the time to set it up, and it worked because it's a progression of events that gets increasingly absurd. Now on Cheers, the car has a wreck, and then Sam finds a stake on the engine block. And there's no context. It doesn't make sense. The joke doesn't even land because, you know, there's no moment of, oh, it's the barbecue thing that Cliff bought. You know, there's no connection to anything. So I say Wings did this one better because they took the time to set the joke up. Woody's been hired to endorse a product he doesn't like. So to help him out, Frasier suggests
Post-hypnotic suggestion.
Lilith is skeptical until Frasier claims he's gotten laughs by
hypnotizing Lilith into removing her shoes whenever anyone mentioned brie cheese.
And seeing her reaction, he does it again a few minutes later.
Is that a tambourine behind you?
And then one more time when Woody accidentally triggers her. Again, I can't play that song because I'll get a copyright strike, but y'all know what it is. Looking for something to do when the airport is shut down because of fog? Brian hypnotizes Joe to cluck like a chicken whenever he says the word.
Tortilla.
And again.
Tortilla.
And because good comedy happens in threes, one more time.
Man, it's a lot of tortillas.
I think Wings did a better job with this one, and I only say that because I think Frasier comes off as a little mean-spirited in this one. When Sam says he's having blackouts, Coach says,
kind of a nice break in the day, isn't it, sir?
And when Joe says he doesn't suffer from dizzy spells, His lawyer says,
Oh, me neither. I find them relaxing.
and I'm going to give this one to Cheers because Coach is just funnier.
Remember the Ritz-Carlton, darling?
Frasier reminisces, but then Lilith says,
We've never been to the Ritz-Carlton, Frasier.
He tries again.
I meant the Four Seasons.
Strike two.
Helen tells Joe he needs to lighten up and shares a recent memory.
Somebody got a little frisky at the Museum of Fine Arts.
But Joe disagrees.
We never went to the museum.
Again, this is clearly a win for Cheers. I can't show too much in a fan video like this or I'll get copyright strikes, but in this episode you can see Frasier kind of twisting in the wind while Joe didn't even really seem to care what Helen said. So Diane is trying to get back together with Sam, and she asks Frasier for a neck rub. Frasier clearly struggles with his feelings here. And in the end, he's trying to be encouraging.
You and Sam are magic.
But as soon as she's gone,
I should have killed her while I had the chance.
Casey is ranting about her ex-husband, and she gets progressively worse and worse. And then finally it culminates.
I should have killed him when I had the chance.
First of all, remember what I said about setting the joke up, okay? The writers at Cheers clearly did a better job here. Wings had a different approach to comedy, and I think they did much better when they weren't recycling jokes, you know, when they were relying on their own style of humor. Here we see Cliff is waving to Rebecca to let her know she has something on her lip. And Frasier picks up on the signal that Rebecca is sending out. Antonio really does have something on his lip. Casey's trying to be subtle, but Antonio's picking up on what she's putting out there. Now this is an entirely visual joke, and they both pulled it off really well, but I'm going to give this one to Wings because I think Amy Yazbek is really, really funny. Sam is laughing because Carla told Diane that he was the father of her son Gino. And Diane is confused until she sees a picture of Gino. And then later, of Gino's father. Antonio is showing Helen a picture of his cousin's new baby. He shows it to Joe. Brian doesn't even give him a chance.
I heard about that picture, man. Keep it in the bag.
And finally to a priest.
Whoa!
I tell you, one of the hardest things for an actor to pull off is sustained laughter. But Shelley Long and Ted Danson both nail it in this scene. And personally, I rank this as one of the funniest scenes ever. On the other hand, there are several episodes of Wings that are just so perfect, I think you could use them to teach a class on how to write a sitcom. And this one, Nuptials Off, is one of them. So it's a really tough choice here, but just judging from this one single joke, this one scene, I have to give this one to Cheers. The episode itself is kind of mid, but I tell you, even after 42 years, this scene still cracks me up. Listening to a city councilman get everybody in the bar all stirred up.
America!
Frasier has to remind everyone.
But he didn't say anything!
Sandpiper's new corporate owner tells Joe they need a big idea.
Really big idea.
Although he can't tell them what the big idea is.
What is the really big idea?
And Joe winds up.
How can you be on board? He hasn't said anything.
Nobody does the slow burn building outrage thing better than Kelsey Grammer. This one has to go to Cheers. So Sam is doing this thing where every time Diane starts to walk away, he says something under his breath.
Please don't go.
And then she has to come back.
What?
Please stay here. You go, I'll die.
What?
Here Brian is leaving the island and he's not taking Casey with him.
I'll miss you.
What?
And then when Casey tries to go...
Okay, you can go.
What'd you say?
And just watching those two scenes, Shelley Long is such a great actress. This one goes to Cheers. So this is the end of episode 1. I think I've got enough material for at least one more. So far I've covered characters and specific jokes. Next are plot devices, which are things that, you know, pretty much happen to anybody, like a marriage or a breakup. I have tropes, which are things that only happen in sitcoms, you know, like where you have to pretend to be somebody's butler or something like that. And finally, I have entire episodes or plot lines. So that's coming up in episode 2. Leave a comment and a like. Let me know what you think.